Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's BU Professional Development webinar, How to Write a Networking Email That People Will Respond to. My name is Jeff Murphy, and I'm an Associate Director in the BU Alumni Relations Office, as well as a proud alumnus of the BU Questrom School of Business. Today's webinar is sponsored by Boston University Alumni Relations and is offered as part of BU Alumni Career Weeks 2017. BU has dedicated the entire month of March to alumni careers with 31 days of networking events, professional development webinars, and panels, both online and in 14 cities around the world. Whether you are a seasoned professional looking for a change, you're new to the job market, or you just need some advice to apply to your career, there's likely something taking place for you. See the full schedule of events now on our website at bu.edu/alumni/career-weeks. It's important that we get your opinion on how we're doing, so we very much look forward to receiving your feedback via a survey that will be emailed to you next week. I know we have alumni joining us today from 15 different countries around the world, places like New Zealand, Ontario, Canada, Hunan Province in China, Madrid, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Jamaica, Poland, and U.S. cities like Phoenix, Laguna Beach, California, Athens, Georgia, Eagle, Idaho, Oak Park, Illinois, Jackson Heights, New York, Philadelphia, Houston, Seattle, and as always, dozens of Massachusetts alumni from towns like Melrose, Duxbury, Charlestown, Fitchburg, London, Lincoln, Hyde Park, and more. For each and every one of you out there, please know that we really do value your opinion on this and every program that we offer. Before I introduce today's speaker, some brief housekeeping notes. As you know by now, this webinar is being hosted on the Adobe Connect online meeting platform. If you experience any trouble with the audio or visual portions of today's presentation, I'll ask that you please contact Adobe Connect directly. I'm going to give you a phone number if you want to jot it down just in case. You can reach Adobe Connect at 1-800-422-3623. Today's presentation is being recorded and will soon be made available for on-demand viewing on the Alumni Association website found at bu.edu/alumni. Our speaker today is very eager to answer any questions you may have, and you're welcome to submit them throughout the presentation using the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen. We hope to get to as many questions as we can during today's webinar. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for the day. Presenting from here in Boston is Questrom School of Business alumnus Mo Chanmugham. Mo is a certified coach and founder of MGC Coaching, where his mission is to help professionals create more fulfilling careers. He is the creator of Conscious Career Design, a method that incorporates principles from personal development, design thinking, and branding to help professionals figure out what they want and how to position themselves to land their ideal job. His desire to become a coach stemmed from his experience trying to find his dream job, but never quite feeling fulfilled. After working in the sports, film, and music industry, he realized he was chasing a shallow definition of success rather than one that was authentic to him. Through working with a coach of his own, he realized what was truly important to him in a career, and in less than a year, he went from being an unfulfilled lawyer to enjoying a fulfilling career as a coach. Because of his experience, he understands why people feel stuck in their careers and what they need to do to move forward. Mo, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and get your slide deck up and running. You should see that in just a second here. And once you do,
Sure.
the floor is all yours.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the intro, Jeff. Hello, BU alumni from around the world and here in the US and local to Boston. This is exciting. Happy to have everyone here. It looks like we have a good group. So, thank you guys for showing up. I want to make this absolutely useful and practical to all of you. So definitely shoot me some questions as they come up and as we go through my slides here. So the purpose of this presentation is to help you reach out to people and connect with people in a more effective way. So today's agenda is we'll start with a little bit of who I am. Jeff gave me a great intro there. Then we'll go into the power of your networks, like why is this important? And then we'll talk about how to find the right people, because I know that's always a challenge. We'll go over what not to say in an email. So if you're out there emailing and not getting results, hopefully you can avoid some of these mistakes. And then we'll go over the better format, the right way to email someone, and then what to do after they say yes. And then I'll definitely leave some time for Q&A. So let's get started. So first off, as Jeff mentioned, I'm a BU 99 grad from SMG/Questrom. Um, I've changed careers 4 times, and I've actually been fortunate enough to never have to use my resume to get a job. I've been lucky to have great networks or to build great networks, and have gotten to do a lot of pretty cool things in my career. So my first job was working in sports marketing at Reebok. That was actually thanks to a marketing professor at BU. And then I moved to LA and I worked in the film industry for a little bit, again through my network, and then decided I wanted to become an entertainment lawyer. So I moved back to Boston, went to law school, and landed my dream job working in-house at Def Jam Records. So all this to say, I'm a big fan of networking. I know people get jobs from sending out resumes and things like that, but I find this to be the more effective way of getting a job. So that's why I really coach. That's what I really coach people towards. I'm now a certified coach, and after having all those fancy dream jobs in sports marketing and entertainment, um, I now say I love what I do because of what I get to do every day and not because of the title I have or the company that I work for. So I definitely find this work very fulfilling and I'm happy to do it and feel lucky to get to do it. My full-time role right now is as Senior Associate Director of Career Services at the law school that I actually went to. And I also have my own coaching practice as well. So moving forward, let's get into the power of your network. Why is this important? And why is it so helpful to have a network that can help you out? So this is a great quote by Mark McCormick. I'm sure some of you already heard. He's sort of the godfather of the sports marketing industry. He started the giant agency IMG. All things being equal, people will do business with a friend. All things being unequal, people will still do business with a friend. And that just really sums up our human nature, right? Like like to do business with people we like, people we know, and people we trust. And so, and that obviously comes through networking and relationships and building those connections. So if you're just out there getting started on the job search, having trouble with the job search, and you're mostly relying on sending out your resume and hoping an employer calls you back, that's sort of the minimum level of commitment you should be putting to your job search. There's a lot more effective strategies you can be using, and we'll talk about some of them today. The next slide gives you a little bit of statistics here behind why getting a network and tapping into your network is so useful. So here we see a referral who gets an interview has a 40% better chance of getting hired than other candidates. So what we've learned is employers themselves like to hire people who've come referred to by either someone that already works there or someone that they know. So in addition to posting um, job postings online in places like Indeed and Craigslist and Glassdoor and whatever have you, they're absolutely reaching out to their immediate network of friends and colleagues to say, hey, do you know someone who'd be a good fit for this position? And most large companies also have internal referral bonus programs for employees to bring in people they know. So the idea here is that those types of candidates come already vetted from that contact. And so that's why those people have a much better shot of getting interviewed, and then, of course, a much better shot of actually landing that job. So as best you can, you always want to try and get some sort of referral, some sort of connection into a company that you're trying to make inroads into. And obviously using the BU alumni network would be a great resource there. The next slide here is, employers also prefer referrals because they're the ones who are more likely to stay. They're more engaged. They already know people at the company. So again, this really falls back on the idea of human relationships. We like working with people that we know. We like working with people that are similar to us. So, all those things are working in your favor when you can get a referral. So let's get into how do you get those referrals? So I think a great place to start is your alumni network. And one of the best tools to do that is using LinkedIn. So I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. I think it makes job searching infinitely easier and more effective. And so I want to walk you through how I would do a job search if I was starting over right now. So if you go onto LinkedIn and type in Boston University, you want to make sure you get to the school page, and you'll know you're on the school page because it says "See Alumni" in that tag there. You see, I have an arrow pointing to where it should be. Otherwise, you might get into other Boston University LinkedIn groups like the alumni group or whatever have you. So it's important to get to the actual school page, because once you click on See Alumni, it takes you to a page that aggregates all the alumni that are on LinkedIn. And there are obviously thousands of you guys. And what's awesome about this page is now you can do a very detailed search of the type of people you want to connect with. So I've given you an example here of someone looking for a job in public relations. So if you notice on this slide, you can dissect the search by geographic area. So here we're focusing on Boston. And then you can type in keywords like public relations or healthcare or graphic design, whatever have you. And the alumni's profiles will come up who have those keywords in their profiles. Um, and you could start to sort of sift through those profiles and look at the headlines under each alumni, and you can sort of guess for yourself who would be a good contact or a worthwhile contact to reach out to. So here's a great place to start. You've got a very targeted way of finding the right people to connect with. So once you actually click on a profile, and here I have an example of a great profile here from Heather McIntyre. So she's a BU alum. She works in public relations, and you can and LinkedIn does a good job of showing you either how you're connected or what mutual groups you belong to. And this is actually really important. So assuming you're not already connected to this person, you can either send them a connection request, and more than likely she'll accept it if she sees that you're a BU alum or if she sees that connection there. Um, but actually, a really cool sort of backdoor way of emailing someone that you're not connected to is if you both belong to the same group. So, for example, if you both belong to the BU alumni group, you can actually, and I'll jump to the next slide here, you can actually go to that groups page. So here I am on the BU alumni group page and click on where it says members. That brings you to the members list. And if you type in the person that you're looking for, you'll notice that the email icon pops up. So if you scroll over their name, and you'll see the email icon pop up, and you can actually send them an email without being connected to them. So I think that's a pretty cool way of connecting with someone that you're not already connected with on LinkedIn. So this way you don't have to wait for her to accept your connection, and there won't be a delay there. So here you can get right to the business of emailing someone that you want to connect with and chat with. So let's talk about what not to say. So, I talk to a lot of people, and these are the folks who are having a hard time getting a job. And, when it comes down to it, the reason why they're having a hard time is getting a job is they're just not being effective in how they're approaching people. So I like to say when you're at this stage of the job search process, when you're right in the beginning, you don't want to ask for a job, you want to ask for advice. So, and it sounds like it's sort of an indirect approach, but it's actually, if you consider how sales works, for example, most people say it takes 6 or 7 touch points before someone will buy from you. In this same vein, asking a complete stranger if they know if their company's hiring and they don't even know you, you have a kind of a low chance of someone saying, sure, send me your resume, or yeah, we're hiring. Um, but here it's really all about establishing a relationship, making that first connection, have a quick conversation, make sure that person likes you, make sure you like them. Once you hit it off, that person is going to be much more likely to help you moving forward. So here's a slide where the wrong way to email someone is simply just asking for a job. Hi Heather, I'm looking for a job in PR. I see that you work at Dunkin', and I'm wondering if you could pass my resume along to HR. Thanks so much for your help. Sincerely, amateur job seeker. Again, you're kind of just like basically cold emailing someone and asking them to help you pass their resume along. Not the most sophisticated way to do the job search. The next slide, and here we go. It's not an effective approach. Again, you're asking someone, a complete stranger, for a job. They don't know you. They can't vouch for you. You're not building that connection right there. And you're essentially just spamming them. And you notice she doesn't even reference the BU connection. So there's a real missed opportunity there when you're reaching out. So let's talk about the right way to email someone. And here, what I talk about is asking for advice. People, they may or may not have a job, but most people are happy to share their advice. They're happy to share career advice. They know you're looking for a job. That's not a mystery. That's not a secret. A lot of people feel like they're being insincere if they're doing this because obviously they are looking for a job. But understand that this is a process. It's not a one, two-step process. It's a several-step process. And this is step one in building a relationship or building a connection with someone at an organization where you eventually want to work. So here's my correct email to send. Here's the right way to ask for it. Dear Heather, I'm a 2005 BU grad who's been working at a PR agency for the last 6 years. I'm considering moving to the client side, and I'd love to ask you a few questions about your experience at a big brand. Would you have time for a quick 20-minute call in the next few weeks? Thank you for considering my request. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, professional job seeker. So here's why I like this email. Here, you're introducing yourself, you're sharing sort of where you're coming from, you're giving this person some context, you reference that BU connection, obviously that's important, and you're asking for advice and not a job. And again, advice is free, right? People can give you that. Um, yeah, it's only a few sentences long, so you keep it short and sweet. You don't give them a whole sort of long story about how you're looking for a job. You don't send them your resume. You just keep it short and sweet because the idea is you just want to get them to say yes to this phone call. And then once you get on the phone call, you could take it further. But this is all about keeping it simple and making it easy for them to say yes. Also, when you think about the job search process, a true professional does their research first. So it's not like you're out there asking for a job or begging for jobs. You want to have a chat with this person and see what it's like to work there. So that's some of the questions that'll come up in this informational interview that you're asking for. So, it's definitely important for you to research them as much as, for them to get to know you. Here, you're also not putting them on the spot to help you with the job, right? You're sort of keeping it open, appreciate your time, would love to chat with you, and hopefully they'll get back to you. And my kind of rule on when people get back to you, I like to give them a week or two. After 2 weeks, it's definitely within professional courtesy to follow up. If they still don't get back to you after that one, they probably won't be a strong connection for you anyway at that point. So you can let that one go. But by all means, it's totally okay to follow up. You should follow up. This is obviously your priority, not theirs. So don't feel like they don't want to talk to you because they didn't return your email. Who knows what's going on? They're probably super busy. Maybe they're on vacation. So it's certainly within the professional bounds of courtesy to follow up with someone like that. And then again, consider this is the first step in building that relationship. So after they say yes, this is, the idea here, and I'm using a very specific example of the job search process and sending out that first email. The idea is here is you're asking for an informational interview. It's an easy way for you to learn about, what they like about what they do, what are the challenges there. You can get some insider knowledge of the organization. Obviously, this is your meeting, so you're coming prepared with questions. And here's a good opportunity to also get your resume reviewed by someone in that field, like by a professional in the field you want to be in. So you get some really valuable advice there. Um, a great way to wrap up the meeting is always to ask if they know of anyone else you could speak to, or if they know of any organizations you should be keeping an eye on, um, and ask them to keep you in mind if they hear of any opportunities. So that's kind of where you slide in the definitely please keep me in mind. I'm very interested in working here. If anything opens up, please feel free to shoot me an email or let me know. So that's kind of how you sort of um, go about this sort of first few steps in the job search process and crafting the type of email that's not going to turn someone off, but really allow them to say, oh, this is a person that's obviously looking for a job and has a few questions, and because they're an alum, I'm happy to help them. So again, just to summarize, what we went over here is finding people to talk to is the number one, is the first and number one challenge. And so starting with your BU alumni group works. If you've gone to other universities, if you've gone to grad school, using that network is great as well. LinkedIn makes it super useful to do that. You could do searches based on where you live, the type of organizations you want to look at. You can even sort of segment when people have graduated. So so you're not talking to someone who just graduated last year, but maybe someone who's been out 5, 10 years, depending where you are in your job search. So LinkedIn will be super useful for that. Um, And that's pretty much it. That's kind of how I wanted to sort of present this to you. I'd love to open this up for questions now. I know many of you probably have more specific issues to chat with. Um, Jeff, I know we have some questions to ask our guests here. Why don't we start with question one? I'd love to hear about what the stage of
Yeah,
the
thanks, Mo. I
career
want to
most of
remind
our
folks,
audience is in.
obviously, now's a great time to type your questions into the Q&A box. While we've got Mo and some time here, I know he's eager to answer your questions about the experiences you've had trying to network with people. So definitely type those in the Q&A box now. And while we're waiting for those to come in, yeah, we've got a couple poll questions here that would be, I think, really interesting for Mo to help him in his answers to your questions. So Mo, do you want to just read back this first one here?
Yeah, so all right, so question one is what career stage best defines your current situation? Are you a student? Are you a new professional, 0 to 5 years? Are you 5 to 10 years into your career? Are you a middle manager, senior manager, executive, or C-suite? And is there one more? Pre-retirement or retired? Um, yeah, so we've got the whole gamut here.
So let's move on to the next question.
Got about 7 choices.
And we'll have our alumni answer this one.
So great, yeah. So how many of you, how many of your networking requests are answered? Yeah, I'd love to get a chance. So is it I consistently get a reply, more often than not I hear back, I occasionally get a reply, or it's a communication
Well,
black
it's
hole?
great to see that at least people are hearing back from time to time. Obviously, um, how you craft your message is a great way to make sure that you're hearing back more regularly than not.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, looks like we're having some
For those of you
success here.
who feel like you are constantly getting a reply, congratulations. Maybe feel free to use that Q&A box at the bottom to let us know if you have any other tips to share about why you feel like you've been successful. And then lastly, Mo, this will certainly be interesting as obviously people are networking for different reasons.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And so whether it's a job search, a career change, using it for sales and business development, or other, so there's like once you've made initial contact, maybe you met someone at an event, and now you want to follow up the next day. There's all kinds of reasons why you'd want to reach out to folks.
Great. I'm going to go ahead and end that. We've got a bunch of questions that have come in. Thank you, everybody, for good questions here. Let me take a second to read through those. I know we have at least one person who, Mo, didn't quite catch how you suggested connecting with BU alumni via LinkedIn. This question came from Bob. I'm actually going to put up a note here because there's a very easy way to find that information. If you just go to linkedin.com/alumni, that should take you directly to the alumni. It's called the LinkedIn
Hmm.
Alumni Search Tool, and it will pull up whatever most recent educational institution you have on your profile. So for those of you who only attended BU, it will automatically pull up Boston University in your search parameters. But you can switch back and forth between institutions based on other schools that you might have attended for master's degrees or for your bachelor's. But Mo, what were the other ways that people might access that information? That's obviously an easy one, but
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to do it. The other way is if you just type in Boston University into the search bar. Let's see what comes up. Boston, and you go to the school page. So Boston University, you'll see Boston University Alumni Group. You'll also see Boston
right,
University School,
great.
and so you want to go to that page, and then you'll see there's a button to tag
Just
to
going to
click
move
See
this over to
Alumni,
the
and it takes you to
side
that
so
same
people can
alumni
still
page.
see your contact info. Um, we've got a really great question from Anthony. How many times would you follow up with someone before moving on, Mo?
Hmm. Hmm. That's a good question. So I would say 2 to 3 times is probably the usual. I remember when I was uh, networking to get a job after law school at Def Jam, where I had interned my second summer, so I already had a contact there. I probably followed up with my boss there way more than 2 to 3 times. She took a while to get back to me, but that is where I wanted to work. That was my dream job. So I probably followed up with her periodically over about 2 to 3 months, and finally she got back to me when they had an opening and an opportunity to bring me in. So that goes to show you that, listen, if it's something that you really want, there's a good way to follow up where, you can sort of space it out and periodically
We
do
got
it,
a
but,
great and
don't give up on
related
that dream
question
job.
from Kathy. Any recommendations on how to restore dated networks? So when you've
hmm
been connected with somebody but haven't been in touch with them in 5 or more years, how do you get back in the game with those folks?
Mm. Um, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, so one thing you want to consider is what's your intention. So if you're getting ready to change careers or you need a job search, I would say an old network, I would probably do just a good old sort of direct email, no sort of mass emails, but I would reach out to people and really check in with them, ask them how they're doing. So maybe a 2 paragraph email where you would just want to check in with you, see how you're doing, and then sort of let them know where you are. So things with me are going great. I've been, working as an attorney for the last 10 years, but I'm looking to make a shift into, you know, the startup world. And I see you work for this startup company. I'd love to ask you a few questions about um, what it's like to work there. So, sort of warm them up with, hey, how are you doing? And I know it's been a while. Um, uh, but then, have a clear ask if, so you want to be clear
Got
on
a
why
really
you're
great question
emailing
from
these folks.
Massimo. Should we target individuals who would be considered colleagues, or should we look for decision makers in upper management?
Um, I always start with the colleagues. I think that's sort of a good place to start, and if they can be helpful, great. And if they can't, then I would move up the chain. But um, but yeah, I tend to think that people who are sort of at your level, the colleague level, it just might be easier to get their ear to have a conversation, um, where more senior people might be more difficult. But for example, if the BU connection is with that senior person, then go for it.
Another great question from Sylvia. I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this, but do you have any recommendations for networking emails for those that are not BU alumni and for whom you do not have a clear connection, but the individual is at a company that you really want to work for? We talked, obviously, Mo, specifically about connecting with BU alumni and using that as a resource, but how do you connect with people that you don't have a clear connection with?
Yeah. That is a good question. It's actually just a minor tweak to the email that I've used in this presentation. So let me just go back to that email. Um, so uh, it's just a minor tweak where you're still giving context to why you're reaching out to them. So assuming this person isn't a BU grad, you could simply say something like, Dear Heather, I've been working in the PR agency, at a PR agency for the last 6 years. Um, I'm considering moving to the client side. I came across your profile doing some research on LinkedIn for PR professionals. I'd love to ask you a few questions about your experience, yada, yada, yada. So, no alumni connection, no connection at all, but it's, you're sort of presenting yourself as someone who's been doing research. You came across their profile. I'd love to connect with you and ask you a couple of questions. So you give them a reason why you're reaching out to them. I'm in PR. You're in PR. I'd love to ask you a couple of questions
We
about
have a great
where you work.
question from Anna or Anna. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I think there are some differing opinions on this. So I'll be curious to hear what you tell your clients, Mo. Would you say it's more successful to ask for a phone call or an in-person meeting? Should I be asking to get together for coffee or should I just be asking for that phone call? What's your advice for that first step?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, this is a common question too. So I think it's probably smart to ask for a quick 20-minute phone call because that's probably the least sort of intrusive thing you can ask for. Now, if they respond to say, hey, you know what, why don't we meet for coffee, or why don't you come by my office, or why don't we meet for lunch? Great, do that. Um, but I wouldn't start off with you asking them out to lunch or coffee. I would um, and that's really just because I think in today's day and age we're all busy and uh, people are used to doing things virtually. So um, if they want to take it to a face to face, then by all means go for it. But I would sort of
Would
leave
you,
that
Mo,
option
I'm
there
wondering,
for
would you
them.
ever suggest offering both and letting that person choose, Yeah.
That's actually a great option. Yeah, yeah. Would you be open to a quick phone call or maybe grab a
We've
cup of
got a lot
coffee?
of
Yeah,
great questions.
absolutely.
This is the part I always love about these webinars. Our alumni ask great questions, but many of them could be, Mo, I bet you could do other webinars just on, related topics. And this one sort of bleeds in there, but Martin's asking, he has a very large network of
Sure, sure.
executive recruiters. Some people
Yeah.
he knows fairly well, others not so well. Does any of your
hmm
advice change for networking with headhunters
hmm
or recruiters?
Um, Yeah, I think they're obviously in the business of, placing people and finding people work. So for them, if you want to let your network know that if you want to let your network of recruiters know that you're ready to make a move, that's where you can just directly reach out to them and say, hey, listen, I'm considering making a move. Um, this is what I'm looking for. What motivates a recruiter is if you're someone that they can place and make money off of, they're going to be happy to help you. So for recruiters and executive headhunters, yeah, if you're ready to make a move, just let them
Another
know
really
and
good
and
question from
take
Nick.
it from
Would you
there.
recommend trying to actually call a contact at their company once you've identified them as a potential networking contact on LinkedIn? So sort of bypassing that initial email stage.
um, I don't know. That's a little too direct. Picking up the phone and calling a stranger. I would start with the email because it's just a good sort of soft way to connect with someone. Um, but then again, I kind of preface it with it all depends on your situation. So if it's, your dream company and it's somewhere where you really want to work and they're not getting back to you over email, give it a shot, and then they might be totally fine with that. Um, but yeah, I can imagine that'll either work really well or it could turn someone off. Um, so I would start with the email, and if that's not getting you anywhere, then maybe you escalate to a phone call. But again, be aware that it might
Question
it
from
might sort
Chris.
of turn them off.
Mo, you mentioned that you've made several career changes. Um, does your approach to networking
hmm
change industry by industry at all?
Um, no, it really hasn't. It really hasn't. I mean, I'm always, when the few times it's happened now, it's really just been a matter of reaching out to my immediate network. But it's coupled with uh, building an expertise in that new area. So obviously transitioning from working in entertainment to becoming an entertainment lawyer, obviously I had to go to law school and build a whole new network. And then to leave the law and get into coaching, that was a transition period of about 2 to 3 years where, I learned coaching. I then got certified in coaching. I started coaching clients for free. Um, so so the networking goes hand in hand with also building my expertise in that new area as well. And so as you're building that expertise, you're obviously meeting people in that field as well. So that's something to keep in mind as well. I talk to a lot of people who want to change careers, and it's not a quick overnight transition, or very rarely is it.
Um, Interesting question from Tim, who just wants you to expand a little bit on kind of the focus of this initial um, request, what you're asking for when you get in touch with somebody. So Tim's question is, will someone with minimal contact and knowledge of you actually recommend you for a job? Could you explain a little bit more clearly what the expectations should be beyond that first informational interview? We also have some other folks who are asking kind of, okay, so once you've had that first cup of coffee with somebody, or that first phone call, how can you best leverage these people
Hmm.
once you've made connections with them? And again, I realize that we could do a whole other webinar on that, Mo, but can you elaborate a little?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, those are all great questions. So I would say, as you're doing this, you're going to run into people that you meet that are going to, you can tell are going to be great people to add to your network. So I kind of use a metaphor of branches on a tree where, there are going to be some short branches where um, it just doesn't make sense to keep in touch, or they don't really have anything to offer, so those branches don't go anywhere. But then there are going to be those longer branches that will say, hey, you know what, I actually know of a position. Or you know 6 months later, when you check in with them or they check in with you to say, hey, I just came across a position that you might be great for. Those are the types of people, that those are the long branches where it will eventually lead to that next job. So, your expectation here as you're going through this is, not that everyone's going to be a perfect fit, or that everyone's going to be able to find you a job. It's just like in life, some people are going to be great people to keep in touch with, other people not so much. And then to the other question of how often do you follow up? How do you keep your network fresh? I would say, the average job search takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months. So, as it takes that long, I think it's fine to sort of reach out to people maybe on a monthly basis, every 2 to 3 months, just to check in, um, with a quick hello to say, hey, just want to let you know. It's almost like you're updating them on your status. So if your status has changed, maybe you've gotten a new certification or something like that. That's a good reason to check in with them. Even if it hasn't, and it's been 3 months since you've chatted, just let them know, hey, just want to let you know, just want to check in with you. Still looking for a position, as an engineer. Would love to, if anything comes up, if you hear of anything, let me know. So it's really about using your good judgment to sort of keep in touch with folks, um, and keep that
Got an
line of
interesting question
communication
from
open.
Gay, but Gay, I'm actually gonna um, twist your question around a little bit. I hope you don't mind. But Mo, does any of your advice change, or what specific things would you recommend somebody do when they're looking to network with folks, but in a completely or wildly different industry, or somebody who's been out of the workforce for a while, whether they were, raising a family or out with an illness? How do people address that in their initial outreach?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question, and I know that's a common challenge as well. I would say, in this initial outreach email, you probably don't want to address all that right away. You don't want to sort of hit them over the head with your whole life story there. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that will come up, and it'll be part of the conversation. So really, the strategy, sort of the big picture strategy here is that the email is sort of the quick and easy ask to get on the phone and to get that face-to-face meeting. And then there, you can absolutely, share your resume, talk about the fact that you've been out of the workforce for a while. Maybe I take care of kids, take care of a sick family member, whatever the case may be. Um, that's where you can bring that up. But yeah, I would sort of not throw that all in the first
I have
email
a
to a
pretty
complete stranger.
specific question from Teresa, and Mo, I'm interested to hear your response to this. So, Teresa met a BU alum at a BU alumni event. Teresa, thank you for attending. Um, so, this alum was one of the
Hmm.
panelists at the event, and
Hmm.
he suggested to Teresa that she reach out to another person at this company. This was a senior vice president, and gave Teresa the name of this person to reach out to. So, Teresa found that SVP on LinkedIn, but thought that she should ask that original BU alum that she met for that person's email instead of just cold calling her on LinkedIn. So she hasn't heard back from this original BU alum that she met at the
Hmm.
event asking for his email. So Teresa's question is, should she just go ahead and cold call this other senior vice president that he told her to get in touch with, or should try to be a little bit more patient and wait to hear back from that person that she originally met with?
Yeah, so if the original person has, I mean, if it's been sort of a week or 2 weeks, I might just follow up with the original person, just say, hey, just wanted to see if I can get, the senior VP's email from you. I found him on LinkedIn. I'd love to get his email from you. If it's been a while and he's not, so certainly absolutely follow up with this person. And again, if they're not helpful, um, then yeah, it's totally go for the cold connect. But I would reference this other BU alum's name. So in the outreach, you can say, dear so and so, I'm a BU alum. I ran into Mike Smith at this other event. He recommended I reach out to you. I'd love to chat with you about blah blah blah. So definitely use that person's name as a reference because that'll probably
I was thinking the
um,
same exact
help to
thing.
smooth
We're
things
on the
over.
same wavelength on that, Mo. Anthony just chatted in with a really great question. So when you're emailing folks, do you
Yeah.
have any suggestions as far as effective or really attention-grabbing subject lines? We all know, that's a really important piece of an email. So what would you put in that subject line?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So the other good thing about LinkedIn is you can skip that process, so you don't have to do that on LinkedIn. Um, so yeah, like it would totally be on a case by case basis. That's tough to answer, but I tend to keep things. I'm an informal guy. I tend to keep things informal in that sense. So maybe something like, um, you know, BU alum would like to connect with another BU alum. Do you have time for a chat? Something like that. Um, so maybe in that subject line, address the fact that you're from BU and you'd love to ask a few questions about, or BU alum thinking about making a career change, would love to ask you a few questions.
Um,
Something like that.
Nick's got another question that I'm going to also change a little bit. And Mo, this might be a little bit unfair because I think it's completely situational, but can you comment as to what is the right time or the
Mhm.
appropriate time when you've established a relationship with somebody through networking? At what point is it okay to ask that new contact to recommend to human resources that they take a look at your resume for a job that you've identified at that person's company? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, totally, totally. And look, I mean, that's the whole point, right? That's the idea. It's like this person that you've met that you now, you have an informational interview with, you build a good connection with. Obviously, the point is from this first conversation, they like you, they see you're someone that would be a good fit for a position at their firm, and they're happy to help you. So maybe you have that conversation, and a month later, you see there's a job opening at that company. um, Reach out and ask. Yeah, if the conversation went well, and that's obviously for you to judge. But if and if that person's happy to help, then that's essentially what you want. Is them to walk your resume to the proper HR manager. Um, or if maybe their response is maybe you have to apply through the web portal, but absolutely if they can put your resume in front of someone, that's essentially what you want. And that's really the whole point of this, right? It's to avoid just sending out a resume into the black hole and hoping that HR manager calls you. If you have a connection at that firm, absolutely ask that connection if they would be comfortable sharing your resume with
Mo,
with the
I
appropriate
just
hiring
moved
manager.
slides on us to talk a little bit more about the other things that you do in your role, because Christina has asked a question that sort of veers off of the topic at hand,
Hmm.
but obviously she's looking forward to an opportunity just to pick the brain of a career
Hmm.
coach while we're here. So do you mind if I ask something that's, beyond networking? Awesome. So Christina, her question is, so
Sure,
I know
sure.
this is a talk about networking, but if you're someone who is deciding on their career path, what other things do you recommend to folks to figure out what field you might want to work in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, at this point, you're professional, you're in the working world, and I think a lot of people sort of get caught up in having to make the right next choice, and that puts a lot of pressure on themselves. I know for me, becoming a career coach was not something I had even thought about originally, so it wasn't even on my radar. So I'm a big fan of telling people to really open up their perspective because for the most part, most of us keep our options to a very limited practical perspective, and that's totally fine and normal. But if none of those options are inspiring you or you're happy about and you're still feeling like geez what do I want to do next, I would say the key here is be honest with yourself about what you're actually interested in doing. And yeah, it might take some time to get to that next level or to get to that next career, but that's kind of the whole point, right? It's like you're not just signing up to join another career that you're not going to love. Um, so number one, my tip is focus on your interests because those are a great place to start. And how you explore that, some practical ways to do that, I think, are to do an inventory of how you like to spend your time outside of work. A great question I ask people is, what do you pay for? Um, what do you actually spend money on that as far as activities are concerned? So, are you really into fitness, travel? Do you take cooking classes, photography? Those are kind of cool ways to figure out what you actually are interested in. Another exercise I do with clients is we look through classes. So I think, at this stage of your life, if you were to go back to college, or maybe you're interested in, looking at when you look at sort of these online universities, um, take a look at their course catalog and see what would you actually study based on just the fact that you're actually interested in it. Those could be good places to sort of give you clues as to what could be a good next field. I worked with one woman who was in consulting, and because of this exercise, she sort of reconnected with the fact that she loved to write, and the fact that she loved to write, she started taking classes. And fast forward 2 years later, she's now an English teacher, and she loves what she does. So, and that's not something she was considering back when she was a consultant. She was really stuck with what to do next. So, there are definitely creative ways to think outside of the box about what's next for you, and I think that's really just based on obviously your situation and your comfort level. Um, but yeah, if you're feeling stuck, um, I think those are some good places to start. Is just like focusing on your interests and
And Mo,
being
you're
honest with
actually
yourself
making
about
a
what you
very
want to
generous
explore.
offer to everybody on the webinar today for our BU alumni here. Do you want to talk a little bit about how people can follow up with you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you guys have asked some great questions, and I'd love to give you some more advice and help if I can. So please check out my website at mgccoaching.com. There you can learn a little bit more about me. You can see some of my writing there, and if you click on my services page, and you're interested in some of those topics are what I coach people on, whether it's career change, job search, networking, how to use LinkedIn more effectively. Um, my real desire is to help people, sort of like Christina, who, sort of in that place of trying to figure out what they want to do next. I think a coach is what helped me sort of get out of the to think outside the box and find something really meaningful. And sometimes we need that person in our corner. So I offer a complimentary consultation to anyone who wants to have a chat and talk about how it can help them. So please, you can book a session through my site. So if you're feeling compelled to have a conversation with a career coach, please go ahead and do that. It's free, free of charge. No strings attached. So you might as well.
And
Um,
here, obviously,
but
your
yeah,
email
thank you, Jeff.
address is
Thank you
on
for
our
that
screen now
opportunity.
too, as well as your website. Mo, the things that you're talking about today, I think sometimes, all right, I don't claim to be an expert about this, but I certainly spend a lot of time working with alumni in terms of building their networks. And I think sometimes it's there isn't always a right or wrong answer, but I feel like you really nailed what I think is important about reaching out to folks, particularly about the power of the BU Alumni Network. So I just really want to thank you for giving up your time today and doing all these great things for our alumni.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I was happy to, and I know this is a tricky thing for a lot of people to do, and we had so many great questions from our alumni, and if there's any way I can help, again, feel free to shoot me an email or connect with me through the website. I'm happy to answer questions. Please connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I put a lot of writing out there, really based on questions like this. So yeah,
Awesome.
any way I
Thank
can
you,
help, I'm
Mo.
happy to help the
I also
BU
want to thank all of
community.
our guests for coming today. Specifically want to thank all of our donors who've supported BU in the past. We have an incredible lineup of events coming up during the rest of March. As I talked about, it's Alumni Career Weeks. On Monday, this coming Monday, March 27th, we have an amazing webinar coming up by an alumna fashion entrepreneur who's going to talk about how to dress for the job that you want. And we do still have a few seats remaining for that webinar. You can register for that now on our website and our other remaining Career Weeks events on our website at bu.edu/alumni/career weeks. And as always, if you or any BU alum you know would be interested in presenting a professional development webinar like this for the BU alumni community, I'll ask that you please contact me at the Alumni Relations Office or by email at jtmurphy@bu.edu. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a great